So, like a lot of you, we have a ton of data. And how do we get that to our well professionals, our drillers, and our well owners? So first step was we had to identify our audiences. So who is it that even needs our data? So we've got three groupings. We've got well owners that need to know what their well looks like, when it was constructed, those details. We have real estate professionals who are looking for well data on properties that they're trying to sell or assisting buyers with. And then we have our well professionals, our well drillers, our engineering firms, our pump installers, our consultants. And what do they even need? So their needs are very different. Our well owners and our real estate professionals have very similar needs. They're pretty basic. They're looking for where wells are and well construction reports. So what does that well look like? Our well professionals need a lot more information. So they need things that are up to date. So paper maps are kind of out of date the second you print them. They need tools to interact with that data. They need to be able to manipulate and annotate that data. They need to know the well information, and they need to know sample data. And they also need to know our well construction requirements throughout the state. So we're faced with data accessibility. So it's kind of a balancing act. What data do we need to give to folks, and how do they need to interact with it? So we have to make decisions like, do they need basic tools or complex tools? Do we need things that have training, or are they more intuitive, things like Google Maps? And then we have technology considerations. So based on our audience, are they even tech savvy? If they are, to what level? And then minimum requirements for that platform that we're going to use. We obviously don't want to use something that has very specific requirements that maybe aren't available to everyone. Then why are we even doing this? So what problem are we trying to solve? For our well professionals, we're trying to get them up-to-date information with fewer URLs to remember. So as many of you know, if you've got information on 5 different points in your website, it's hard for people to keep track of what changes when and where to find it. We also wanted to reduce errors and non-compliances that folks were having simply because they were relying on old printed information. So our well owners and our real estate professionals, they needed a way to kind of self-serve that search, that access, so that our staff weren't spending as much time just looking for well records. So our solutions for the general public and real estate professionals are kind of combined. We opted for something that had a basic search and view. So they don't need a lot of tools to interact with that data, but they need to be able to find that data. We opted for platforms that are user-friendly, more intuitive, and don't really need a lot of training. We have tip sheets for the few little things that might help them use that information a little better, but they don't have to have special understandings of GIS applications or data tools. And that level of information that they needed was pretty minimal and basic. They need to know where that well is and what that well looks like. So we have 2 methods for our general public and real estate professionals. We've got a spatial view so that they can see it on the landscape, and then we also have like a tabular search. So if that's more useful to them, that's great. Sometimes it's just a little bit of user preference. So for the tabular view, they can enter very minimal information, some pretty basic stuff, like what county. Maybe they know the year that the well was constructed. Maybe they know the municipality they're looking in, and they can actually find a lot of information. So just based on those 3 points of data, we've got 22 potential well construction reports that they can access. So they can look down that list and see, maybe they know which well address they're looking for, so they can look through. They can look at owners at the time the well was constructed. Sometimes that helps with those old septic permits or parcel information. Maybe the well cap has a driller's name on it, so they can look based on the well driller. Who even drilled near here? And they have access then, under that Action tab, to actually view the full well construction report. Then for our spatial view, it's pretty straightforward. They can type in the address that they're interested in, and it zooms them to that point. We have a default radius of 1 mile. That's that circle where things are kind of a little bolder and everything else is faded out. And they have a list view of all the wells that are in that area. And if they choose a well, they can just click on that well. It'll give them a snapshot of that information. Things like, where's that well located? What's the well use? Who drilled it and whether it's active. And then the most important part is our location method. We have well records going back to the 20s and 30s. The locational information on those is very different than a well that's drilled today. We don't have coordinates. We maybe don't even have a current street name or address for those older wells. So having them be able to see the location method, which is how we placed it on the map, helps them understand why that dot or icon is showing up where it is. So this one says it's a parcel centroid. What that means is we ran a job in the background to match street addresses so that with parcel layers, so that that dot is showing up on the parcel it belongs to. It may not be in the exact location that the well is at on that property, but it's at least matched up to where it belongs. So our solutions for well professionals are a little more involved. They need access to spatial views, more detailed information. They need to be able to annotate, manipulate, edit, and interact with that data. They need mid to deep levels of information. They need to know not only how that well's constructed or where it is, but our extra requirements, maybe other things they need to consider. And they might need some training or help documents to access that. So this is our well driller viewer. So it provides a spatial view. They can search by their address, their PLSS information, or coordinates. So they have a way to narrow in what they want to view. And we've got tons of layers. Our layers that are defaulted on are well locations, because obviously that's the main thing they're after, is what well is there and where is it. We've got things like special well casing depth areas. So those are areas within our state that require construction that is above and beyond the standard requirements. So those are pointed out on the map. They are different colors. When they click on it, it tells them what those requirements are and why. We've also got things like areas that require approvals or variances. So our older remediation sites are plotted on here. Areas within 1,200 feet of landfills are on here, so that they know when they need to take an extra step and request those permissions or do extra sampling. We also have some areas that are not necessarily a strict requirement, but are alerts. So we have a whole eastern portion of our state that has sort of a dual aquifer situation where we've got an aquifer on top, a large amount of shale that separates it from the lower aquifer, and there are special construction requirements in that area. So we have that flagged as this is where we anticipate that geology to exist so that they can plan ahead. And we've got some optional layers, things like parcels and administrative boundaries. So townships, villages, counties. We have topographic and LiDAR data. So maybe they want to know what the elevation is because the neighbor's well is 300 feet deep and you don't know if that actually applies on your property. And then we've got some other features like special considerations for well types. There are certain things they have to take into account when drilling high capacity wells. So those are flagged on there. And then we also have nitrate penetration graphs to try to help our drillers make better decisions and plan better when drilling in areas with nitrate contamination. So some of the tools they have, we've got things like buffers, drawing tools, and measuring tools so that they can measure distances to some of these visual objects. They can use our buffer tools and our drawing tools to pull in information that is of interest to them, or to draw things like if they need to provide a map with drawings and annotations and notes for a permit or an approval, they can do that right in our app. They don't have to print it and hand draw it. They can type, they can draw whatever they need to do. And with the measurement tools, it'll actually display their distances or their areas, whatever they need. We've also got methods for them to add their own data. So some of our users have a lot more understanding of GIS data. They have access to more tools and they want to add in something that wasn't already in our maps. So we have that ability for them. They also have ways to share their projects, so they can save them, they can email them, and they can print them. We also link to some other pertinent resources, things like our groundwater retrieval network. DWS is our drinking water system for all of our public wells. And then we have water use, which is our high capacity program. We also link out to other sources within our DNR programs, and then also other statewide resources like our geologic history and our UW Stevens Point water quality viewer. So they have a lot of tools. So once they identify the area that they're interested in, they have methods to actually view them right in that viewer in a list view, so they can compare things like casing depths, static water, total depth of these wells, right there in a quick snapshot. They can export that data into Excel or CSV files if they want to do more manipulation. It's all there for them. They also have the ability to change how they're viewing those results. So they can view them in that list view, they can have them in a table, which looks much more like an Excel file, and they can just interact and filter things how they need to. We also let them print a PDF. So once they've added all their notes, their drawings, whatever they need to add, they can pretty much just print that, and they can attach it to our electronic variance and approval requests. So again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to rely on handwritten or hand-drawn maps. Typed information is far more legible than handwritten data. And then with their well pop-ups, we actually give them a snapshot of information. So we give them things like the unique well number. So that's that well's identifier in our system. Also who owned it, where it's located, things like use, who drilled it, when was it drilled, and they've got casing depth, well depth. They can view the static water. Again, our location method is here, helps them quantify that physical location or qualify it, so they know how good that point is. And they can also link out to the full well construction report, or any sample data that's associated with that well is direct linked. So they can click a link, it'll take them to the page in our groundwater retrieval network that has all of the well results for that well. Our other solution that's out there is our nitrate penetration graphs. So these are an optional layer. Drillers can turn them on, and they are based on township and range. So we take a larger physical area, and we provide them with information on nitrate specific. So we give them information like the number of wells that are in that area and the depth to water. So this is a visual showing all the wells that are in that area, what the depth to water was. Then we give them nitrate specific graphs. So that red line is the MCL for nitrate, 10 milligrams per liter. And then all those dots are different samples that have come in over time. So the coloration is based on how old that sample data is, and they can basically see where is there a drop-off in nitrate concentrations in a given area. This map doesn't have, or this graph doesn't have as great of a drop-off, but oftentimes we'll see that water table minus casing, so that's how far that casing goes past static water. We'll often see a drop-off where all of a sudden we don't have any detects or extremely low detects of nitrate. We have other views. That first graph that I showed you can have multiple points from the same well. So we can have, if that well is a public well and it's sampled every year or every 3 months for nitrate, all of those points will show up on this first graph. And on the second one, we take the maximum concentration for each well. So if your well's been sampled 20 times, we take what the highest value is, and that's what's plotted on this map. So it's a similar map, but it's only got 1 point per well. We also have another view in case the plot with dots isn't as user-friendly for you, or it's not visually what you like to see. We have some bar graphs that will show you that static water level and then quantify it with that, or qualify it with the color that corresponds to the nitrate concentration. So you can again visually see where that static water level is, what that relative nitrate level might be. So it gives them another way to discern where nitrate levels might start to drop off. We have another system that's all tabular search. It's the groundwater retrieval network. So they can access sample data for multiple wells in a geographic area. They can look at specific contaminants in an area. They can search whatever they want to pull in that data. And it lets them export that into a spreadsheet for further analysis. So maybe they're looking at an area with high manganese, and they want to know what other wells in the area have for manganese. They can pull all of that in, and it includes some of the well construction information like casing depths, depth to bedrock, static water levels, so they can try and make their own graphs or own determinations on what might be best. That's all I have. I was too speedy.
We have time, we have questions. So there you can see them right here.
Oh, they're right there. Okay, so how did we accomplish the massive data entry step for well construction reports? So somewhere around the 90s, we actually started to enter the well data. So things like casing depth, geology formations, that was all starting to get entered. But then we have all of these older well reports from prior to 1988 that are basically scanned PDFs. So they have a little bit of that locational information entered so that you can view where it might be, but you still have to look at a big scanned PDF. We have an ongoing project where our field staff during slow times will actually data enter everything that's on those reports so that they are incorporated fully into our data set. How did we get well contractors involved? They were part of the conversation. So what was it that they needed? And we consciously made an effort to choose well drillers throughout the state, so we weren't focused on a single geographic area, but also choosing drillers that had different levels of tech savviness. So we chose ones that had very basic levels of tech savvy, like maybe they know how to search and bring something up, but they're not comfortable on computers, all the way up to those that have college degrees in things like hydrogeology and are used to doing more of that tech savvy and data analysis. And how much time was required on their end? We were trying to be as respectful of their time as possible, so we would schedule maybe an hour meeting once a month or every 3 or 4 weeks to get their input. We would give them, kind of during that time, we would show them what we had developed. They could ask us questions. We could take that back and incorporate things or respond to that question, why we couldn't do what they were asking us. So this is, how do we represent or make available well reports with location information that's absolutely unmappable? So we have in our spatial view these frustrating points throughout the map. So there is a central point in the state where everything that doesn't have anything better than state of Wisconsin are all stacked on top of each other. Each county also has a central point where if that's the best locational information we have, they're all stacked there. And those can be a lot. I've gotten an email from a well driller who stumbled upon that central point in a county, and he said, what is wrong with this? There's 900 and some wells stacked on top of each other. And the response was, congrats, you found the middle of the county. That's where they all are. How do we allow open access to all of the private wells? It's on the map viewer, certain well types, so community wells and high capacity wells they don't have their specific location plotted, so it's more generalized, things like the section or the quarter, and we obscure their actual coordinates on the map view because that doesn't require a login. Our drillers also have a login version of a tabular search where they can search with a lot more fields and they can see the actual data that was entered. So they can see the real GPS coordinates, the real physical locations. We just obscure that a bit on the public view since we can't control who is looking at that data. Are these data viewers available to homeowners? Yes, they are. I have a template email that I send to real estate professionals and homeowners that say, hey, where's my well? And it kind of walks them through how to use those tools, how to search, best practices when you might be looking for a well that's older and doesn't have, 123 Main Street listed as its address. So we help them to kind of get used to it. Our realtors are pretty good at it now. We still have some that just don't want to do it themselves. They want someone else to say, here it is, here's the well we have. Are the nitrate penetration graphs available to the public? Yes, they're available on the Well Driller viewer as well as in our groundwater retrieval network. So if they don't want to use the Well Driller viewer to find that spatially, they can go straight to our groundwater retrieval network and they can just search by township and range and select that file. Can we update? Yes, we do. I update any and every well location. So if I have someone out there that's working on one of those old scanned PDF wells and they say, hey, guess what? It belongs on this property, we update that. We'll use real coordinates if they have actually pulled them. Otherwise, we'll go with the parcel centroid. But we do update that. We'll update anything and almost everything on that well record to make it more real-time, more up-to-date, and more valuable in the end. And did we develop the Well Driller viewer in conjunction with the local drillers, and what has their feedback been? Yes, we used our drillers. We have a great relationship with a lot of our well drillers, so they were involved in that process, and most of them really like it. We recently had to switch the platform on them, so we got a little bit of negative feedback with our recent change because what used to be a single click might be 2 or 3, but we made a conscious choice to go towards this platform, this newer platform, because it has better tools that we can build in that are more useful for them. What did we use to build the dashboard? We used ArcGIS. Originally it was AGOL, the Esri products, and now I believe it's, I'm blanking on it. I'd have to get back to you on the exact one. But we moved away from ArcGIS, AGOL, and moved into a different platform. How many staff input well data and add info to this tool? So we have our field staff that during slow times will do that data entry on all of those older well reports. And anytime they see something in the field where the data doesn't quite match, they'll let us know and we will fix it. The staff that can actually physically change the data within the data tables is only 2 of us. It's myself and an LTE that helps me review these well construction reports. We're the ones that can physically make the change. And part of that is the QA/QC process. So if you give me an address or coordinates, maybe there's other locational information on that well log that needs to be updated too. We make sure that all of that happens. And the drillers actually enter data directly into the table. For the new wells that are going in, they're actually able to log in online, everything's electronic, and they fill in those reports. And within that entry tool, that database that they use, we've actually set some logic to flag common errors, things like locational errors. So if their county doesn't match with their PLSS, or their PLSS and their coordinates don't match, it will flag it so that they can try and correct that on their own. It flags a few other things too that might be needed, but we tried to make it easier for them to fix it so that we don't have to go back and forth and say, did you really mean over here? Are you sure that's right? They can try and fix it on their own. Do you allow well contractors and county health departments to add or edit data? The well contractors can add their well construction reports. Some of our delegated counties, which have well ordinances do have read-only access, so they can log in and see all that true data, but they don't have the ability to edit it. Those changes would need to be sent to myself and my LTE so that we can, again, verify some of those extra pieces that might need to be updated. Resources needed to do this. So we started with just a database table. So it was just an Oracle table that had all of the bits and pieces of information, and we migrated it into something that actually would work with ArcGIS so that it could be mapped, those spatial views. We've kind of tried to keep processing that so that all of our data gets moved to a spatial view so that it's easier for folks to see on the landscape. Oh, what software did we use to create the nitrate graphs? A couple of our hydrogeologists in our groundwater program did that whole statewide thing, so I don't know exactly what they used to create them. I know they used Excel and some other tools, but they'd be the ones to know exactly what they did. Outreach and assistance videos. We did do some like drop-in sessions when we changed our platform so that folks could learn how to use it. We have a help document where everything we've ever changed is on there. So if we add a tool or change how that tool works, it's documented on the date that it changed and what changed. And we have user guides that kind of walk them through how to use different tools. And we're always willing to do one-on-one conversations or screen shares to talk them through whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. Oh.
Thank you. Was there one more?
Oh, yeah, privacy concerns. Occasionally we'll get a request that someone is concerned with their name or their well being out on this map. It's all a public record. We have some acts in the state to potentially obscure law enforcement related records, and we're working on the best way to address that so that it's not publicly available.
Awesome. All right, thank you.